This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Fun night in hoops. Lots of football coming up on the way. Less fun watching my hockey bets crash and burn yesterday, but neither here nor there. Stormy, Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you. Today, Re4 John and Rebuild. How are you?
I'm doing well. Looking forward to the sporting events of this evening. It's a very deep and very solid NBA card later tonight, so can't wait for that. As you mentioned, while there was good basketball yesterday, I thought a lot of the interesting results were in college as opposed to the association, although we had a couple. So, yes, very much looking forward to it later today.
Some bad ball for someone's alma mater on the desk as well.
Yes.
So
I mean, for the Mountain West as a whole, it's not really looking great in hoops either, but we can get into that.
Yeah, we can get into that a little bit later, which actually is a good segue into setting the table for the day. Let's hit the rundown.
It's time for the top headlines and topics of the day. This is the Rundown.
So, top items we've got on deck over the course of the next 2 hours here on Money Moves. We've got our little Sunday short list, games in the NFL we are most interested in as Week 12 kicks off tomorrow night. And it's worth noting off the top here, JVT, we did get some QB confirmation news. C.J. Stroud officially out for that Thursday night game against the Bills. Davis Mills will start. They're getting 6 at home against the Bills. Also learned this morning, Falcons quarterback Michael Penix Jr. will be done for the rest of the season. Partially torn ACL, requires surgery. They're shutting it down.
Yeah, I guess what? You only like one game? Of the 4 we are slated to discuss,
we had overlap.
Oh, okay, all right.
2 of the 3 you picked, I was going to put down.
For our audience, I'll send you $1 on Venmo if you can guess what game Stormy picked.
Wow. Sometimes it'd be like that. Tweet at us, at MeJVT, at Storm Buonantony, at VSiN Live. Always love to interact with you guys throughout the course of the show as well. Shedeur Sanders, by the way, another update for the Browns. Kevin Stefanski told reporters this morning he will start against the Raiders. Raiders laying 3.5 at home in that one. And you mentioned basketball. Yes, lots of hoops in the NBA. We're going to talk some college basketball as well. I'm calling this one fade or lay up, whatever we're thinking about on the games today. I thought it was creative.
Okay, I kind of get it. Yeah, it's kind of creative. Look, yes, you're right. Today, not only recap from last night, we finally got to see LeBron on the floor, so that's going to be a ton of fun to recap and look forward to. That was, by the way, not like a bad beat, but a very tough loss to swallow last night with Jazz plus 13.5.
Yep.
But we do have some interesting ones, including tonight. The Charlotte Hornets as road favorites against the Indiana Pacers.
As soon as I saw that, I wrote it in the rundown in bold, all caps letters. Our Hornets are a favorite tonight. And why is that? Because they're playing a one-win team.
They might not deserve it either.
And oh no. Can't wait for that preview. It's also Wednesday, which means West Coast bias. We're going to deep dive into a handful of the West Coast college football games we find most interesting. And college football is actually where we're going to kick off the day here because the latest edition of the CFP rankings came out on the selection show last night between those 2 really dynamic college basketball games. Interesting results there, which we will get to in a bit. But teams with the biggest questions for me coming out of last week were what would the committee ultimately do with Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, Notre Dame, and Miami? And how is this going to shake out? So here's how it ultimately looked. The Sooners jumped from 11 to 8 following the win in Tuscaloosa. Alabama drops from 4 to 10. The Irish in between those 2 at 9, which I will admit surprised me a bit. I'll tell you why in a moment. Miami leapfrogs Vandy after beating up on NC State with the Commodores on a bye. The bracket graphic, by the way, that we have here and that was on the broadcast is also very misleading, and I'm glad that Reese Davis addressed it as
Why
such.
ever would it be so misleading?
That Miami at 11 would never actually be in that spot because it would be the ACC champion, which Miami is not in the wheelhouse to be. And then Texas falls from 10 to 17 after the big loss at Georgia.
Can I just say, they have to figure this out. Because last year, it was obviously people being confused by the rankings not reflecting the seedings. Now this year, you have a team that is not in contention for the spot it continues to be projected in. It is an annoyance. I don't think we're all that stupid. You could just put projected. Yes, you could just put that in that seed. I don't understand why we continue to play this game.
I agree. I don't know why they do it. Now, that said, there are a lot of other things that are worth reacting to. And I know you've got some strong feelings, so why don't you kick us off?
Well, I don't think I have strong feelings. I think that
based on what I saw in the rundown, you have strong feelings.
I think yesterday, so we had Hunter Yurachek, I believe Arkansas AD, who is now the CFP committee chair, who I thought did a wonderful job in teaching young children out there who want to get into like PR and things like that how not to deliver a message.
Oh, I thought you were going to say how to speak words without saying very much.
No, I thought he was awful. And granted, you're going to have some insight into how this whole process works, but I think it comes back to the way that Juracek cannot communicate properly because when you look at, when you hear, when you read some of the things that Juracek was saying about some of the decisions the committee made in terms of seating, it comes across as not making any sense, as being contradicting, as being this weird, fickle, sliding scale of how you're measuring certain things but not in others. And so generally, and given the way that you were explaining things to me, maybe there is some method to the madness, but to an extent, you have to have somebody who's a little bit better at delivering said message because everything when you read coming out of that, it really doesn't make a ton of sense if you really dive into where these teams are, why they are. And, of course, front and center is Notre Dame and Miami.
Yes, and so let's start right there. Here is Reese Davis asking Hunter Juracek about the comparison between those two teams.
I think when you look, Reese, at Notre Dame and Miami, we really compare the losses of those two teams. Miami has lost to two unranked teams. Notre Dame has lost to two teams that are ranked in our top 13. And so we really haven't compared those two teams. They haven't been in similar comparative pools to date. But Miami is creeping up into that range where they will be compared to Notre Dame if something happens above them.
So there are two parts of that I think are interesting. One being that he essentially says, right, the strength of opponent losses is a big deal, even though one of those losses is to the other team. Yeah. And then the other is he mentions the comparative pool. And this is what I was talking to you about before we came on air today, that I didn't realize a lot of people didn't really know until my husband was asking about it last night as we were watching the rankings, is the way that the committee does these rankings is a little bit weird. And as somebody who is in the selection committee,
explain to people why you would know this.
I 2 years ago went out to Grapevine, Texas, and was a part of a mock selection committee exercise where we're doing it in the room where they're making all of these decisions each week.
For a member audience, she works for the man, so understand where this information is coming from.
I'm just explaining a little bit of how the process works. We sit in that room. Basically what they have you do at the very beginning is you start by ranking the top three teams. And so all of you are on your own separate computer. Nobody else knows what you're deciding. And you click 1, 2, 3, who you think should be the top three teams in the country for this set of rankings. And it goes up. Once you see who the top three teams are, it shakes out. If there is any dissension in the room, you then get the opportunity to re-vote on those top three teams. Once the top three is cemented, they move on to the next batch, which I believe is 4, 5, 6, 7. And then same exercise, and then 8, 9, 10, same exercise. And so when he says that Miami and Notre Dame haven't been in the same comparative pool, it's because in that group batch exercise of picking teams that are going to be in that specific pool, Notre Dame and Miami have not been on the same cut line. So while Miami is sitting here at 9, and let's say that cut line is 10, Notre Dame is at 9 and that cut line is at 10, Miami has not come up into the conversation until that next batch. So that's why they have not been directly compared to one another in that same discussion.
Correct. So I think the rebuttal is...
And I'm not saying I agree with it.
Correct.
And I think that's an important thing, too. I don't know why they do it this way. I know that it's data-driven exercise, that they have the numbers behind it to support why they do it. I just don't know what that rationale is. I think it's a little bit weird, but that's how the committee does it. And us saying that's weird isn't going to change the way they do their process.
Sure, right. And that to me is like the process is dumb. Like, as he notes in the clip, like, hey, Miami's going to like have some things ahead of them. So because let's say BYU and or Utah both fall out, for whatever reason, suffer a loss along the way, they slip and Miami moves up in the rankings. Then all of a sudden, because two teams ahead of them lost, they can now then be compared to Notre Dame, who they beat. It's just such a weird process that doesn't make much sense, especially when you have the actual head-to-head result. And as well, it doesn't look great when you have something like Oklahoma and Alabama at play, where you have, by the way, they lost. And the other part that I think drives people nuts.
That's why, and then they have been in the same
Sure, right,
pool.
of course.
So
on the surface, it doesn't look great. But what drives you nuts is some of the quotes coming out of it. Some of the contradictions. This to me doesn't make sense. Your pool thing makes some sense when you talk about, all right, this is the way they're doing it, so thus they're not going to be compared.
It's not my pool thing.
Yeah, well, your explanation. But I still, you work for them, so I don't know. But either way, this is what doesn't make sense. on Oregon, quote, they had a really big win at Iowa 2 weeks ago. Iowa was ranked in our top 25 previously. They won at Penn State. I know Penn State is not the same Penn State we expected them to be this year. Still, it's a very challenging place to play, as evidenced by Indiana having to score a last-second touchdown to win there a couple weeks ago. On Alabama, quote, how Florida State's season has continued to play out is impacting how that loss looks for Alabama. Not done yet. On Virginia, it hurts Virginia that Louisville fell out of the rankings, and that was one of the best wins. Those are the things that I think drive you nuts about the way they're deciding. You could talk to me about comparative pools. You could talk to me about their process. That does make some sense in some sort of way. But for you to, in one breath, say Oregon gets credit for a win at Penn State, despite the fact that Penn State has slipped, while at the other points with teams like Alabama and Virginia saying their losses and their wins, those actually kind of hurt because the opponent that we're talking about has slipped. Those are the things that don't make any sense.
It's the speaking out of both sides of your mouth. It's changing the rules every week. And I think that's why, understandably so, people get frustrated every time these come out, because in one breath, to your example with Notre Dame and Miami, yes, the pools essentially is what is the selection committee's buffer for Notre Dame right now, if you want to call a spade, right? But in one breath, you're saying that head-to-head doesn't matter, or at least making it sound as if head-to-head doesn't matter. And then another, you're making it seem like it does. And in the cases that you said, those early season games, the way that those teams have performed since doesn't impact it, but then in other cases it does. Yep. And understandable frustration with that. There's a lot more to break down from this, and we have an open segment a little bit later. So I think can we flesh this out a little bit more on the other side? Because there is some betting impact for a couple of teams that I would like your opinion on.
Do you lay minus 550 on the no for James Madison? Because very clearly they're not making it in.
So we need to discuss that. There is an odds differential between CFP and to win a game this weekend that I think could be the same bet that I would like to discuss. That and a whole lot more coming up after this.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
So to carry over some of the conversation we had last segment, I don't think there's any disagreement about the College Football Playoff Selection Committee rankings each week being a flawed system. There are a lot of kinks to work out. We were talking a lot about the Notre Dame-Miami comparison last segment. And by the way, if you miss any of the show any day, every hour is always uploaded in podcast form wherever you get your podcast. So Money Moves will be out there at the end of the hour so you can recap any of that. But one other thing that we didn't mention with Notre Dame is the fact that they're ranked above Alabama as well, which I thought was going to be the other side. And that's, again, where I'm talking about this buffer that the committee is kind of giving for Notre Dame here. Alabama, JVT, has wins over their currently ranked number 4, number 14, number 20, and number 22 with Georgia, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, and Missouri. Notre Dame has a win over number 15 in USC.
And
they're getting credit for close losses to good teams, more so than Alabama is getting for actual wins against good teams, which I think is a little bit wild.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, to what you're alluding to here, it sounds like you could lay minus 2,500 on the yes to make the college football playoff for Notre Dame and feel relatively comfortable.
They want them to get in. It really seems like that. Or they're valuing eye test over resume in a big way.
But then again, can I trust that if Miami somehow makes it into the same pool, then all of a sudden are they going to leap Notre Dame and they're going to be on the outside looking in? Like it just going back to what we originally opened up with. It does not seem to make much sense. Again, Alabama, as you're mentioning, slipping, despite the fact that they have, 4 ranked wins, including what is currently the fourth ranked team in the country in Georgia. But they slip all the way to behind all of these teams at number 10. I don't really buy it. And I think part of it is, I think a lot of them kind of understand, Alabama will get to the SEC championship game and it'll all figure itself out. But no, the process still has to be sound. This still has to make some sense. And it just doesn't. At this point, it just really does not. But again, what are we going to do? I mean, we're going to watch. We're going to sit here, and all the teams are going to get ranked. We're going to bellyache about it, whatever happens, and then everything's going to be fine.
How frustrated were you when you saw the bottom of the poll come out and you saw the Tulane green wave? You
know what's funny is, where I was not at home. I was about to leave somewhere, but I was watching. The second I saw the bottom 4, that's all I wanted to watch. When I saw Tulane, I was like, all right, cool, I'm leaving. And I was like, I'll go check the rankings out later. That's what I wanted to see. I mean, because, again, it's this thought of, hey, James Madison, are they going to get in? It's not even that I'm rooting for him. I'm just curious, as I asked Adam Burke yesterday, at what point does James Madison find its way in? Is it 3-loss East Carolina winning the American? Is that what ultimately has to happen? Because, again, they have 1 loss in conference play. They can still win the American if that's the case. Tulane, it does make some sense that they're going to be there in terms of their resume. Having said that, I mean, what are we talking about here? 5-5 Duke, and what else is on the resume? Oh, Memphis. I think those are the best wins for Tulane.
They got waxed by Ole Miss.
They got waxed by Ole Miss. They got waxed by UTSA on the road. A bad UTSA team at that. So I do like this whole. I understand that James Madison doesn't really have a win on the resume at all. And in fact, the only thing you're really pointing to is, hey, we barely lost to Louisville, but not by that much. It's weird how in some instances, strong losses actually matter, but in this case, it doesn't. That, to me, is somewhat disappointing, but it does seem that much like Notre Dame, but at a much smaller scale, the committee is screaming, it's going to be the American. Whatever winner of the American outside of maybe East Carolina, and even then, I would doubt that it's JMU that's going to make it in.
And with that, I was kind of kicking myself when we had Adam on the show yesterday, something that I didn't bring up because I was on the sideline for the New Year's Six game a couple years ago where Liberty got housed by Oregon. And I think that still, a couple years later, lingers in the back of the minds of the selection committee in that this was a team that we gave the benefit of the doubt from because they ran through their schedule the way they did, and they were winning games by significant margin the entire way. And we said, we want to give you credit for that and put you in this game. And it was a runaway after the first series of the game for the Liberty Flames that day. And so I think maybe that does unfortunately hurt JMU a little bit here. And then last thing on that makes me laugh a little bit, though, also is that even with you saying that Tulane or North Texas or whoever wins the American is going to be that team, that's going to give us the most competitive game. All of the projective spreads I have seen for that game against Texas Tech are over 21 and a half.
Yeah, I mean, that goes to the bigger conversation of people who now are like kind of banging the drum for just leaving out the group of whatevers now in general. But, I mean, you have to feel pretty, as we go back to, like, the betting perspective of it, minus, what did they say, 550 for the no on James Madison to make the playoffs, that you can make the argument should be higher. I think at every turn, the committee is saying we don't want this team in. And at this point, you look at the schedules, the remaining schedules for all these teams in the American, because you have this glut of teams. 3 of them are at 5-1 in conference. Navy is at 6-1 with just 1 game left. That's, of course, on the road against Memphis. That's going to be a tricky spot. But Tulane, I mean, they seem to have a very clear path to only having 1 loss in conference. It's at Temple. It's home versus Charlotte. One would assume that you're probably going to win out there and get in. So there just seems to be no real path for James Madison to get in, and I think you can make the strong argument that minus 550 is actually a cheap price for that on the no.
Last one on this, because you are better at math than I am. USC and Oregon this week, going head-to-head. USC is around a 3-1 dog, but you're getting plus 425 for them to make the college football playoff.
Right.
If they win that game, are they not then with the assumption that you beat UCLA the following week as well, which is important, which I think that they will. Like, what would the spread for that game be?
So that to me is you're missing on your exercise. That's the step you're missing, which is you have to have another result in between there. The 1-1 is not USC winning. They're in the college football playoff. If this was the last game of the season, obviously that would be.
That's why I ask you what's
that's
the
what
math,
I'm saying. No, that's what I'm saying. I'm going there. So I don't know what the comparable money line price would be for UCLA. But assuming, let's say, you bet USC to win this, they're 3-1. So let's say you just for the exercise, you bet 100 to win 300. Then you take that 400, you roll it over. Let's say they're like minus 400 to beat UCLA. You're getting about like 500 back there. So that'd be about 5-1. And then assuming they make it in like college football playoff.
So you'd rather money line rollover than bet the plus 425 to make the playoff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the other thing you have working for you there is you do get somewhat similar, I think, and there's smarter people out there that would be able to talk about this. Somewhat similar to the NCAA tournament where we always talk about these things where, hey, the benefit of the money line rollover is you can get out at any time you want. So if you bet a team, let's just say, whatever 14 seed it is, but then their best player gets hurt, the best thing about a rollover parlay is, cool, I'm done. Yeah. I'm just not going to bet the next level, or I'm not going to bet the next game. You can have the benefit of, let's say USC beats Oregon, but then for whatever reason, you get the CFP ranking show and you realize, oh, the committee isn't going to give them enough credit. They're not going to get in. You could bail on that and just not roll that over on UCLA or whatever it is. But I think that's kind of a little bit of a safety valve, if you will. But I think you're probably getting a little bit more if you're doing it that way as opposed to like 1-1, they beat Oregon, I'm just going to bet them to make college football playoff or vice versa.
I think I might end up doing that. I don't think that Oregon should be as significant as a favorite as they are. I'm hoping that it gets back out to double digits on USC so that I can take them there and then a money line sprinkle there as well. But I think that I might end up going that route. Okay, that's enough of college football playoff stuff. We've got a lot of NBA we're going to get to throughout the course of the show, but I did just want to hit on LeBron's performance last night. Back on the court, made his debut. Officially now, 23rd season in the NBA. That's more than any other player in the history of the game. Only 4 of 7 from the floor in what was just 140 to 126 win and cover for LA. Luka was tremendous again, 37 points, 10 assists for him. LeBron did finish 11 points, 12 assists in 30 minutes. But, I mean, speak to that bad beat real quickly, because the Lakers were trailing for a really good chunk of this game.
Yeah, we always have these quibbles about, like, what a bad beat is. But, I mean, like you've mentioned here, the Jazz get off to a really good start in the game. They're catching 13.5, eventually closed in some spots 12.5. I had 13.5. And they're up early on in the contest. At the end of the first quarter, they're up by 9. And, again, back and forth, leading the whole way. And then, sure enough, you blow the contest. And in fact, at one point, by ESPN's win probability metric, I think twice actually, they had just ever so slightly been favored to win the game. And then not only do you not win, you don't even cover, and you end up losing by 14 when you're catching 13.5. So it's tough. The NBA. It's what's going to happen. But LeBron, as you mentioned, look, it's a muted performance, if you will, for LeBron. Comes out, gives you 30 minutes, 11 points, 4 of 7 shooting, which is kind of working his way in. Looked a little lazy at times defensively, but I think you're just kind of, first game of the season.
Sure, got to work some rust off, all of that stuff. But as far as it being the first time that we got to see him and see how it all worked, thought it worked pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, well, look, we have seen this. We did see it last year. They did all 3 of them play together at the end of the season, so they know how to play with each other, and it's not every minute all together. Look, the Lakers had an offensive rating last night at 131.3, so they're going to be pretty good. The Jazz are a pretty poor defensive team. I think overall, we're not too worried about whether or not those 3 are going to make it work. I think they're going to be just fine. They're going to be a pretty good regular season team. And when LeBron gets his legs back underneath him, when he wants to, he can still defend at a relatively high level. A couple of lazy, like, non-box outs, things like that, where you're giving stuff up. But overall, I think as this goes along, they're going to be good. And the one thing I think he's really going to help with, too, is the fact that Luka has the ball in his hand so much. Lakers actually still rank 29th in offensive turnover rate. Having another ball handler like LeBron should really help cut into that and not force so many turnovers. I even think last night Luka ended up having like 8 turnovers, if I remember correctly. So that should help them out as well.
The Pistons also, by the way, rolled the Hawks 120-112, extending their win streak out to 11. Longest win streak in the NBA this season, and that 13-2 start matches the best they have had in franchise history. Reminder, in addition to all of the previews we've got up on the NBA at vsin.com, we also have that AI prop projector tool that is available not only in the NFL, but for NBA props now as well. When you go to vsin.com/subscribe, you get unlimited access to all of those tools, whether it's points, rebounds, assists, 3-point, anything you need there. vsin.com/subscribe. You can get access to it all. We will preview the 9-game slate in the association at the end of the hour. But first, we got to get into a little NFL next as QB1s continue to drop like flies. What that might mean for certain skill position players in Week 12, fantasy and prop implications next with Kendall Valenzuela of Fantasy Life.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Okay, we get it. Everybody on the internet knows that the game I picked in the NFL is Panthers-49ers. We get it.
I have shipped off a few dollars to listeners who have guessed. I said if you can guess Stormy's game, I'll send you $1 via Venmo. So shout out to Mark. I'm waiting for a few people to respond to me via Twitter on DM so I can get your Venmo so I can send you $1.
Yes, we will preview that and 3 other games of JVT's choice a little bit later on. He's Jonathan Von Tobel.
We're officially closed. All right, no more checking in. Like, I don't want to hear, like, when the podcast goes up, and I don't want, like, 20 requests for $1 coming up here in a little bit, okay? We're closed.
He's Jonathan Von Tobel. I'm Stormy Buonantony. Excited to continue some NFL talk with Kendall Valenzuela, who joins us, as always, on a Wednesday on the Progressive Guest Line, doing great work over at Fantasy Life as a football analyst. You can catch her on SiriusXM Fantasy Channel 87 as well. Kendall, and see, it's obvious. Just like if you were to ask that question about Kendall on a given week, it would be Seattle-based. It's not just me. It's normal. Everyone knows Kendall.
Yeah, exactly. Except for last week when I knew that the Seahawks would crush my heart and Sam Darnold would turn back into a pumpkin. But that's fine because it already happened for turnovers. It's fine. Didn't break my heart at all.
Okay, speaking to that real quickly, are we supposed to believe, though, that everything else we've seen from Sam Darnold wasn't real because he had the one bad performance, or does he kick it back into gear? Because I have come to the conclusion the last year and a half that he is a changed man. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think he's changed, until the lights get brightest and until the most pressure comes his way. No, I'm trying to not be biased, but I do believe like Sam Darnold is still going to help the Seattle Seahawks get to a playoff push. It's just, I don't know, it's just really disappointing that when he does get pressure, and the Rams absolutely knew what to do. They knew to take away the easy looks. They knew that if you put pressure on Sam Darnold, that he usually reverts back to his old self. So we saw signs of that. And so that's the only thing that makes me a little bit nervous. I still think Sam Darnold's going to be fine. When we talk about streaming quarterbacks and everything else like that in fantasy football, you have to look at the matchup every single time. But he still has JSN, who's a cheat code this season. Kenneth Walker is now like that 1A situation to the 1B of Zach Charbonnet. But I'm a little bit nervous about it for the playoffs. I'm nervous that we see the exact same Sam Darnold that we saw with the Vikings. But I hope I'm wrong.
All right, so I know at the front of your mind here, we have a lot of running backs, a lot of backup running backs in situations with starters being injured. So how are we going to sift through all the noise this week?
Yeah, it's unfortunately. So the one piece of advice I've been giving people that have been calling into SiriusXM and sending us messages on X is that we just have to be a little bit patient, because we have to wait and see for a lot of these guys if the RB1s on that team are going to be good to go this week. So I wrote up Emmanuel Wilson for the Packers, but he really is irrelevant if Josh Jacobs says that he's good to go this weekend. And there is a chance that we do see Josh Jacobs this weekend. So again, Emmanuel Wilson's the guy that you plug in if Josh Jacobs isn't good to go. It's the same thing with Sean Tucker, but we got news that Bucky Irving could be back this weekend as well. If Bucky Irving is back, you have to immediately downgrade Sean Tucker, and he isn't even in my flex territory if Bucky is back, because it would be Bucky Irving for me and Rashad White. It's the same exact thing, unfortunately, with Kenneth Gainwell. Jalen Warren told reporters that he was going to be good to go back in this game if they needed him to, or he could have gone back in this game. Kenneth Gainwell is at the top of my list as well, but if Jalen Warren says he's good to go back, we know that it's going to be his backfield. We saw Kenneth Gainwell in that one international game when Jalen Warren was scratched right before kickoff, that he was phenomenal. We saw him in week 11 do the exact same thing, 16.6 fantasy points, but we're basically at this waiting period right now for a lot of these backup running backs, because you really don't want to start any of them if they're, if the RB1s are good to go this week.
Fantasy football analyst at Fantasy Life, Kendall Valenzuela, joining us here on the Progressive Guest Line. We have also noticed, I feel like week after week, quarterbacks going down. This week, again, we're in a situation where C.J. Stroud's unavailable. Now, even if you tried to pick, I don't know why you would pick up Dylan Gabriel, but if you did, now he's not even out there. What has been your approach to quarterbacks for week 12?
Streaming, just look at the, it's usually look at the people that are the teams that are playing against the Bengals and the Dallas Cowboys, but we know both of those quarterbacks are completely rostered across to every single league. And now I'm looking at, Jacoby Brissett is the top option. I don't think Jacoby Brissett's even available anymore because of what he's shown over the past few weeks with Kyler Murray out. Like he's been so solid, and we see him. I think he's about 50% available last time I looked across Yahoo leagues. But what he's been able to do in the fantasy points he's been putting up has been great. So I've now gone all the way down to Bryce Young, who is scary. I don't think we get 448 passing yards out of Bryce Young week in and week out. And I think Tyler Shuck is also another one, though. So you have to start really digging deep if you're going down the list and you look at Tyler Shuck and say, this is perfect for me, because that's more in super flex formats. But the last time we saw Tyler Shuck before his bye, he was actually putting up some pretty okay fantasy numbers. I won't say great, but he's good enough that you might look at him and say, okay, he was 19 of 27, 282 yards, a couple touchdowns, no interceptions. Maybe he can give me that day again. So again, that's more for super flex formats. I don't think anyone needs to be going out there in, single quarterback leagues starting Tyler Shuck. But yeah, we're getting to the bottom of the barrel here, and it's really unfortunate. And we just hope some of these quarterbacks are able to come back sooner rather than later.
All right, what about this last week? It was going to be curious because it feels like trying to catch a falling knife when you're trying to see who's going to be the top target for Josh Allen and the Bills. But how do you handle this? Because I think it was Palmer that was on your list here to add.
Yeah, it was Palmer, and it was like if you're, again, a very, very desperate need. The Bills are so frustrating. I think everyone can feel that because you have Josh Allen, who's this QB1 for us in fantasy football, but we really aren't comfortable starting anyone besides Josh Allen and James Cook in this offense. And so I think one of the biggest mistakes that we're going to be talking about that they made this season was not adding a wide receiver at the trade deadline. And I think that's really going to come back to haunt them at the end of the season when they, to me, inevitably don't make it past that big playoff push and they're not able to make it again to the Super Bowl. And I hope I'm wrong on that again. But to me, I think that if you're trying to stream any kind of wide receiver from the Bills, Khalil Shakir is the only guy that we can say, all right, I'll put him in my starting lineups. Keon Coleman was inactive last week because he missed a team meeting. I wrote up Josh Palmer with the off chance that as the season progresses, maybe he gets a little bit more work since he's coming back off that injury. But I would honestly just steer clear of this situation. Palmer may be more of a stash when you look at him than anything else. Khalil Shakir, if you're in a really desperate spot and need a start at wide receiver, otherwise you're just looking at James Cook and Josh Allen, which again is so disappointing to me.
Any other receivers for people that need help you think could be worth a look this week?
Yeah, I think so. On my list, which you can find at fantasylife.com, I'm going to continue because I know I say it every single week with you guys. I'm going to continue to say Alec Pierce. I think if you're looking at guys that you can stash, I've written up before Luther Burden. And I think at some point the Bears are going to have to really start looking Luther Burden's way and Colston Loveland. Colston Loveland is way more rostered, though, than Luther Burden, so he might not be available to you. But I just think at some point they're going to have to go his way. And so he's someone that I'm stashing on my bench with the chance that down the stretch, they're going to need him. They don't have an easy schedule the rest of the way. Caleb Williams, if you have him in fantasy, more of a spot start than anything else. If you're, again, desperate, Kaderil Hodge for the Falcons, I don't love it. They're going to Kirk Cousins, so you have to really downgrade that whole offense, but we might have to just be there. And then I think my last one, again, another stash is Jaden Higgins for the Texans. Again, it's Nico Collins' world, Dalton Schultz as well, but he has really been bumping up the depth chart. I think he can end up being their wide receiver too on this team as the year progresses. So he's someone that I'm stashing with the chance that he has a better route participation rate by the end of the year.
You kind of answered it there, but I was going to inquire, how does this change fantasy options, all of the pass catcher skill positions for Atlanta, and now that Cousins is out there?
Yeah, you really can't start anyone. It's awful. You can. I think Darnell Mooney is someone that people are going to look to just because Drake London is out. And so I understand that he's going to move up my ranks just a little bit, but really Kirk Cousins, we've seen this before and it hasn't been good. I usually try to paint an optimistic picture, and Kirk Cousins, I haven't found a way to do it yet. So I think the better part is that with their running backs, you're going to expect more from Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. Tyler Algier's already been in this spot where you should have been flexing him over the last couple of weeks just because of the action that he gets in the red zone. So I'm looking at him and saying, the goal line carries, maybe we can expect more of that from Tyler Algier. Those guys are going to be the only two that really rise up my rankings at all. Maybe Kyle Pitts gets a little bit more involved, but yeah, you just have to downgrade the whole thing with Kirk Cousins in there.
Before we let you go, do you do anything with DK Metcalf depending on who's throwing him the ball? Does it matter to you if it's Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph?
No, it doesn't to me. I'm going to keep him. I'm probably going to lower him just a little bit. I've got my rankings live at fantasylife.com that people can go and check out. It's been disappointing, though, for DK Metcalf this season. And I think it's been disappointing, as a Seahawks fan who had drafted him before. He was just a little bit disappointing with the Seahawks. With what he's giving you in fantasy points per game this season, it hasn't been necessarily amazing. So he does get a downgrade a little bit with this team. And again, I'm waiting to see, though, if Jaylen Warren is able to go, because I think that's a big piece of this offense. I do think Kenneth Gainwell can step up, but if he's not able to be out there, then I might actually just keep DK Metcalf completely neutral from where I had him last week. So I'm watching that, but yeah, just a little bit of a downgrade there.
Kendall, awesome stuff as always. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you next week.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Kendall Valenzuela. Again, all the work over there at Fantasy Life, and check her out on SiriusXM channel 87 as well. When we come back here on Money Moves, going to get back to a little NBA. We've got a 9-game card coming up. A couple short spreads on deck. Some interesting games. Cavs at Rockets should be a fun one. And should the Charlotte Hornets be a road favorite against anybody? We'll tell you why or why not coming up after this.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Before the line moves, the sharp plays is already there. They they don't just follow the market, they help move it. You're not going to outsmart billion-dollar sports books or full-time sharps on your own, but with the Sharp Plays, you don't have to. Powered by advanced AI, plugged into insider, trusted sources, and active across all the major sports, as well as college basketball, by the way. The Sharp Plays delivers the edge serious bettors use each and every day. They've got free betting reports, real-time alerts, and market-moving insights that are sent straight to your inbox or X feed. Since 2011, the Sharp Plays has delivered documented results, public logs, transparent receipts, everything you need at sharpplays.com. Trusted by the pros, watched by the books. Visit sharpplays.com today and stay ahead of the line. He's Jonathan Tobel. I'm Stormy Buonantony. We're live in downtown Las Vegas, Circa Resort and Casino. 9 games on deck tonight in the association, including what will be an ESPN doubleheader. Cavs at Rockets, Knicks at Mavs on the docket. But the game and hopefully all of our audience is most invested in tonight, because from a future standpoint, important game for the Charlotte Hornets, who are laying a 1.5. The Charlotte Hornets, I repeat, are laying a number on the road at the Pacers today. I need your opinion on it. Can we get the dub?
I mean, anything is possible.
That's not the vibe I need. That's not the energy we need today.
When you have the
Pacers
Lord,
are so bad. Come on.
Anything's possible with the strength of the Lord. The problem is, I think you might be a little preoccupied to help out the Charlotte Hornets tonight. So let me read you a text that I sent today in the Hardwood Handicappers group chat. No longer, resting in peace. Let's see.
No, we're active wherever you get your podcast,
by the way,
ladies and gents.
Wherever you get. I'm on every Thursday, so check that out. Kelly is on weekly as well. I got a text today from Zach Cohen, and this is as I was actually texting them as well. Quote, regarding the Pacers tonight, if not now, when? To which I responded, yo, I was just thinking, Charlotte road favorites, huh? Look.
I hate you all so much. We need this stuff.
Trust me, I hope I'm wrong. A fifth win would go well. And look, the Pacers, for those who do not know, as you alluded to, they have won one game. They have not played well. And a lot of that most of it has to do with injury. And in fact, they have not covered a game since November 3rd. That would be, I think, a 7-game stretch in which they have not covered. They're 0-7 ATS. So to go back to the original question, if not now, when for the Indiana Pacers? This seems like they could do it, understandably, right? LaMelo's not in the injury report, so they're relatively healthy. The Charlotte Hornets are, that is. But you're going to get Nembhard out there. You're going to get Siakam. You're going to get Mathurin. They still have TJ McConnell. There's the remnants of the team that I thought at the beginning of the year could be better than most expected. The big name that's not available is obviously Aaron Nesmith, who is hurt. I just think that if there was a buy low point, they've been at home for the most part. They did just go to Detroit, but that's not a far trip to make if you're Indiana. Coming off of a day of rest, I feel like you can sneak in and steal one from the Hornets here. So I'm going to give it a shot. Pacers plus 1.5 tonight against the Charlotte Hornets.
You're dead to me. Go Hornets. Buzz.
I mean, it's
Buzz.
It's I think it's Buzz City. # Buzz City.
Yeah, but I'm just
all fly.
I know what the slogan is. I'm just buzzing.
#buzz.
No, I didn't say hashtag. I just said buzz.
You're coming off as a what's the word I'm looking for? You're a bandwagon. Are there bandwagon Hornets fans?
I was like, can you be a bandwagon for a terrible team?
But I will say, I mean, again, maybe it's a slightly emotional hedge. Like, hey, man, if I lose out on this, it'd be great.
Another game that you did get invested in tonight, the Rockets hosting the Cavs today. Short favorites there at home. What did you like about them?
Yeah. All right. So injury report for Cleveland, still not great. Obviously, as we know, Darius Garland out. He looks like he re-aggravated this injury that he had that has kept him out for a while now. It's that toe. Sam Merrill is questionable, so it might not be out there either. Cleveland has been a team that I think there's kind of, like, to put it a little bit, I
said home, sorry, on the road.
Yeah, Rockets are on the road. Cleveland at home here. I think that Cleveland's like a little lipstick on the pig, kind of, smoke and mirrors, if you will. Their offense on its surface looks good, but still just floating around 13th in overall offensive efficiency. They're 16th in effective field goal percentage. They're doing this thing where they're asking a ton of Donovan Mitchell to really just put up a high volume of stuff and just say, please, kind of like save us on a day-to-day basis. And I don't think that's sustainable, especially not against a team that has the defensive upside that Houston does. Some of the glimpses into it, too, the way they're generating their offense. They're 27th in shots within 4 feet of the basket. They're second in shots from beyond the arc. So the Cavs are, to put it less poetically, they're chucking every game, and they're getting by in some of these, but it's leading to some low efficiency numbers, and I think that's just not going to be good enough here for you against Houston. Houston, as you can see here, they're coming in off the 2 days of rest, so they have a slight rest advantage. Cleveland, of course, coming in off of 1. I just think situationally it's good for Houston. I think when the way you look at Cleveland, the way they've been trying to generate their offense from beyond the arc for the most part, with no real presence within 4 feet of the basket, no real ability to get to the free throw line either, 23rd in free throws made every 100 field goal attempts. I just think all over the place, you're looking at something here for Houston and going, yeah, this should be a game where I'm just asking them to win. Obviously, they're only 1.5-point favorites. We saw the swing in the market, too. This thing opened up on the overnight at Cleveland minus 2.5. Now we're in the other direction. But I think it's fair to ask for Houston to win this game here against Cleveland, who is, I've been impressed with at times, but the more you've watched them, the more you realize, like, oh, we're kind of on thin ice here, and you're just waiting for the bottom to fall out. You
mentioned that line move. The total is also seeing some action to the over from 233.5 up to 234.5. Our VSiN bet splits page has this one, where'd it go? Just escaped. 71% of the handle coming in on 81% of the handle coming in on the over in that game. And all of our betting splits available, DraftKings, Circa, Bracco, all at vsin.com when you're looking at that. So that is the first of the ESPN doubleheader at 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern. The nightcap, 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern, Knicks at Mavs. For anyone who didn't know why the line moved 2 points in favor of New York, can you tell them why?
Cooper Flagg is sick, and he did not participate in shoot around this morning, and he is officially questionable to play. I haven't seen if he's officially been downgraded to out, but all signs are pointing to Flagg not being available tonight. So with that, on top of Davis already being out, we do have a couple of other names on the report, but Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively are both probable. The big name, this also could deal with it as well. Jalen Brunson, questionable to play. I believe did participate in shoot-around this morning. So that's pretty much the two ships passing in the night, right? Cooper Flagg not being available tonight and Jalen Brunson potentially being out there. I think that puts you where you're at right here with this, which is Knicks minus 7.5, against Dallas. No real opinion other than, hey, you probably should have gotten in before this. Again, you wish you had like some more accurate reports in terms of shoot around instead of just waiting for reports to see whether or not a guy would be available. Remember, OG Anunoby is not playing for New York, so just keep that in mind. They've been hit or miss just the last couple of games since the injuries have hit them. They're 1-2 in their last, both straight up and against the spread in the midst of this road trip, but still think they would have enough to dispatch Dallas. But you know how these basketball games work. Sit back and wait. 7.5 is a big number. See if you can get something cheaper on New York and go from there.
Anything else on the card that really caught your attention?
I think there's a couple. Let's see here. First off, I have a guarded interest in Toronto and Philadelphia.
Okay.
Philly opened as a 2.5-point spread. The total is where I was interested in. 237.5 was the open, but that got bet down. I think right now we're looking across the board 234, some 234.5s. I would think that at 233.5, which is a couple of spots as well, we're going to see some buyback on the over here. Toronto's been very good. They're a good defensive team. Philly with Tyrese Maxey in control because no Joel Embiid today, no Paul George. This should be a game in which you're just getting up and down the floor, high rate in terms of transition play. These are two top 10 teams in terms of pace as well that maybe you're going to be able to get over this total. But having said that, to the point of, why wouldn't this go over and why I'm just a little cautious about just blindly coming in and going against the market here. Toronto's a really good defensive team. They're 7th best in the NBA in terms of efficiency, very good at forcing turnovers as well. They haven't been great in terms of giving up shots at the rim. They're actually relatively poor, give up a ton there. But in every other aspect, they've been pretty good, specifically though in transition. This is one of the best transition defenses in the NBA. So even if you get that pace and tempo that I'm hoping for, maybe Toronto's just good enough to kind of dispel that against Philly, who's a top 10 team in terms of efficiency and in transition, specifically off live rebounds. But I think I'm going to get the pace I want here. But the fact that this has been cut down by about 4 points does worry me a little bit.
So we talked yesterday about a lot of the star players that are having not major injuries, but lasting injuries right now.
Did you see the list that was out the other day?
What?
So it was just tweeted out. It was like, here are all the stars. I'll just show this to you. You have to read the list.
But I mean, I can just tell you off the top of my head,
like,
right?
Look at this.
Oh, yeah, it's like a full thing.
Yes, it is a giant list.
At least most recently, Giannis, Wembanyama, Stephen Castle out 1 to 2 weeks with a hip flexor, Anthony Davis, Dylan Harper, John Morant. Like there's rightfully so, a CVS list of players. And Steve Kerr was talking after the Warriors game yesterday about his level of concern with the wear and tear on these athletes, how long the schedule is, the way that the style of play has changed in recent years. Like, do you agree with some of the commentary on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sissy millennial, so like I do believe that he's right. Look, there's tons of studies that show these guys are running more miles than ever. They're putting more on their bodies. They're a much more vertical game. It's a much more vertical game, if you will, in terms of their explosiveness, the athleticism. Yeah, 100%. And they're playing these 82 games now. Of course, not a lot of them as much, but with all of this wear, I mean, I don't think there is nothing behind the triumvirate of Achilles injuries we saw in the postseason between the three big stars and the increasing amount of just general Achilles injuries and soft tissue injuries that you're seeing amongst NBA players. So I think when you have a bunch of signal or noise, I would assume you have to look into that for some reason or another.
Well, and obviously in the NBA, more than most sports, they do the load management and all of that, but even still, an 82-game schedule is a long one. Unfortunately, I don't think that the NBA is going to cut back any games because every game is a significant stream of revenue.